Good morning. Welcome to Friday Focus. Thank you for joining us here again. This is Friday, the 28th of November. This is a recorded session again. So your comments, please do leave comments and we will respond to you as you get involved. Thank you for joining us on this as we lead up to the Christmas period. I know people at this point of the term are feeling tired. This is the longest term always within the system, so I know that there's that kind of fatigue that's getting in there. So thank you for being here. If you're watching this live, then good for you. It's good to have you here. If you're watching this after the case, thanks for getting involved. So Friday Focus, we've been here for over a year, nearly 2 years now. We're getting up to that marker, and it's great to see our audience growing across the world, people getting involved in this, and we say, joining the conversation. So look, welcome to this episode. It's aimed at leaders and educators looking to make curriculum and teaching and leadership work smarter and not just harder. It is a hard profession to be in. Teaching is so rewarding, and I can say that after now 41 years of being involved in the professional process of teaching and learning, but it is relentless. And I know from those people that I speak to, school that I was in yesterday, that sense of relentlessness is still there. So why today? Why this conversation? I met Dr. Pippa Woolner some time ago through a mutual contact, and we got talking about the work that she's doing, and I invited her to come and talk today, which is why we're going to talk about this idea of teaching and thriving as individuals, as professionals, as people within the system. So let me introduce to you Dr. Pippa Woolner. Pippa, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for being here to have this conversation. I know many people will be interested in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's a real privilege to be invited onto your podcast this morning.
So tell us, because you're not from the teaching profession. You come as a GP, a practicing medical expert. So come tell us a bit about your journey, how you got to have this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So as you said, I'm a doctor, I'm a practicing GP, and I've worked in the NHS now for 24 years, and it's a real privilege. And for many years, I have been involved in medical education, so the education of doctors, right through initially with medical students, through to supporting GPs, both before and after they qualified as GPs. And in more recent years, I qualified as a coach, and I'm coming on this podcast very much in my capacity as a coach. And I did a lot of one-to-one work supporting new to practice GPs. And obviously, medicine is a public-facing role, and we know that medicine as a career has high rates of stress. I know what it's like to feel stressed. And the reason I got interested in educators and in particular teachers was really through conversations. So conversations with friends who are teachers. And in those conversations, I began to see that a lot of the issues that teachers face are not dissimilar to the issues that doctors face. I think particularly coming from that sense of vocation, that sense of being in a public-facing role, a lot of unseen hours. So that's what made me particularly interested in teacher well-being and thinking about how we can support teachers, how we can help them to manage stress, prevent burnout, and ultimately, as you said, to thrive.
And is that is, I mean, my expertise is in the education world, and your expertise is in the medical world, and in our conversations there's amazing similarity, isn't there? I mean, just the things you've touched on there, that good teachers are there for moral purpose. They're there because they believe in the moral objectives of an educated society. Doctors come that they believe in a healthy society and wanting to to the community. So that kind of moral purpose is a kind of underlying element of both of these professions. And you've seen in those conversations some similarities in the pressures and the responses of the individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think coming back to what you were just saying, most people, generalization, but most people go into teaching because they want to help children and young people develop and learn. They want to teach. And that sense of vocation, I think, is such a wonderful thing. It's a real gift. But I think at the same time, it can sometimes be a double-edged sword, because it can sometimes make setting boundaries more difficult. So that's something that I'm, particularly interested in. But sorry, you were saying about, my conversations with people.
Yeah, I did just, how. I say I can see it as a leader in a school, as young enthusiastic people coming in. They come in with that moral purpose. They come with that sense of, I want to make a difference. I want to be there for the young people. Do you see that the same in in the medical profession? People wanting to be stars of health.
Absolutely, I think there are lots of different personalities across the medical world, and that's why we have such a breadth of specialties, including the specialty of being a generalist, which is general practice, and therefore it caters to many different personalities. But again, I would argue that most people, generalization, go into medicine because they want to help people, and they're interested in science, and they're interested in health, and they're interested in biology. But we know, when we look at the most stressful jobs in our country today, we've got healthcare right up there, we've got defence, and we've got education. They're our top three. So what's going on there in terms of what's causing this stress and these struggles?
You finished. Sorry.
No, I was just thinking of the Teacher Wellbeing Index, which just came out last week from the Charity Education Support, with some really quite striking statistics about teacher wellbeing. Yeah,
and there are so many leaders. I mean, obviously, if you're leading an organisation, you want to be responding in a way, because this is your most expensive and your most valuable resource. What you can't see is you're struggling to get them in the door, and then you're struggling to keep the doors closed so they don't leave. And that's what all the data is saying. It's telling us that people are moving on because it is too stressful. And we all know the crisis that is colloquially referred to within the health service in England, particularly, that we're not finding enough GPs. So that's there must be some characteristic that is similar. So let me ask so in terms of your view, because you've now had experience in both fields, if you were looking for characteristics that leaders should be looking for, is it behavior, is it conversation, is it where would you start in that kind of the challenge to the leader to identify the markers of stress among a team?
So if you're looking for stress amongst your team,
yes,
that's a brilliant question. I think we have our individual markers, and then we have markers that somebody else might notice. So I run workshops for teachers, and one of the things that we think about is, what are my early warning signs? So this is me as an individual. So if I use myself as an example, I am very lucky that I sleep well. So I sleep well, and I set my alarm clock, and I wake up with my alarm. If I start waking up before my alarm clock, then that is my early warning sign that something isn't quite right. Something might be bothering me. It might be something to do with the children. I've got 2 teenagers. It might be something to do, it could be something to do with anything. I might know what it is. I might not. But when that starts happening, I make a mental note to myself, right, Pippa, you need to take some time to work out what's going on, and then think about what is the next step you need to take Might not be a step I want to take, but what is the next step I need to take in order to manage that thing that is bothering me? So that's an early warning sign. For other people, it might be headaches. It might be a sinking feeling in the pit of their stomach. It might be stopping going to the staff room, becoming a little bit separate.
Yeah.
So then if you're looking at the leaders running the team in a school, there are different things. You might notice that someone is, again, taking themselves off. They're not as engaged in those conversations, not coming to the staff room. Or it might be the opposite, that they seem to be always at work, this idea of presenteeism, but they might be becoming less effective in what they're doing. So I would say if you notice either of those, that would definitely be a red flag to me if I was running a school. But I think the most important thing, which is probably the biggest challenge for leaders, is that when people are struggling, one of the most important things we can give them is time and protected time and meaningful time to have those conversations. So it's not just a corridor conversation before assembly. How are you? Oh, I'm fine. It's making that time. And I appreciate there are challenges with that. Yeah. So those are two of the things that I'd be looking out for if I was leading a school.
But really interesting the way you describe that. So, so there's organizational markers and management, but there's also that kind of self-regulated personal management. And what you're doing is speaking to the individual, because, as professionals, we should be able to handle ourselves. And there are times when you don't handle yourself because you've moved on too far. And I know, I can say that of my own experience in stress management, in leadership. I could have listened a little bit more to colleagues, around, that process. So, we've all been there. It's no judgment of anyone. It's easy to get into if you're driven by that kind of moral directive, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes if we think about the other extreme, so we've got our early warning signals. And one of the conversations I have with educators is, do you have someone you can be accountable to so that they can say, oh, you're getting a little bit irritable, or you've mentioned your headache. So someone who they have permission to challenge you and say, do you need a bit of a break? Do you want to talk? But then at the other extreme, you've got burnout. And I often think of burnout a bit like do you remember Roadrunner, the Roadrunner cartoon?
Oh, yes. Yes.
And Roadrunner used to run along the cliff, and then all of a sudden he would run off the cliff, and then there'd be a pause. He'd be hovering in midair, and then he'd look down and he'd fall to the ground. And he would always survive because he was Roadrunner. But I think burnout can be a bit like that, as you mentioned, people are so busy on the treadmill of work, they don't notice or they ignore the signals that their body, their mind is giving them. So it might be their emotional health or their physical health. And then they keep running on the treadmill, they keep running, and then all of a sudden they've fallen off the edge very quickly. And that's the danger with burnout, which is why I think trying to, as you said, self-regulate, notice our early warning signs, be accountable, have those supportive leaders that we can hopefully prevent getting to burnout and suddenly kind of falling over.
And that diagnosis of feeling, I just, as you were talking, I was thinking of the image that we have of the duck, with calm on the surface and feet going in the background. Sorry, the noise outside there. I'm not sure if you heard that, but that idea of frantic activity under the ground is, and nobody else can see it. I know that was probably how I was perceived in leadership. I know certainly those around me would say that kind of thing, but it's when that realization of there's nothing under me, and it's kind of that's the difficult place to be, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think particularly if you're in leadership, it can be really hard because is there a sense, and I know I've had this feedback from people in leadership in schools, is, well, I have to be the strong one. So this beautiful swan on the surface paddling underneath, and again, the rates in the education support survey of 86% of senior leaders in education feeling stressed.
Yeah.
And I think it's particularly interesting, and sometimes I if I do one-to-one coaching, we go a bit deeper and look at our drivers. And in transactional analysis, they look at these drivers. And so if you have an inbuilt driver, which is be strong, a be strong driver, or a try hard driver, or a I must please others driver, then it can be very difficult, because you think, well, if I have to be strong, I can't show my emotions. And if I have to keep working harder, I can't press pause on the treadmill. So I think that can contribute as well, these innate drivers that many of us have, to this sense of the, as you said, the swan paddling frantically, but the paddling is often hidden.
Yeah. And actually, something you said there, Pippa, I identify, that one of the things that a lot of leaders have to deal with, particularly in groups of schools, is that they talk, that there is the autonomy of responsibility, and I guess that's, but within a system, you are trying to perform for somebody above who, it can be existential. Your job relies on the achieving a particular thing. There are rare leaders that manage to stand in those kind of high stress circumstances. Let's say a school that's not in the best place that it needs to be, and it needs to be turned around, and there's lots of markers that need to be achieved, and staying there and staying sane, and as you say, aware of the people around you. There are some people that are doing some radical things. I've visited a few recently, but they only exist where the leaders above them have that kind of understanding that you're talking about, and really, I'm going to support you, I value you, I'm going to stand with you. If it gets tough, take a break to do something. But that's rare within a high accountability system, and I guess that is similar within the health service. Is that true? Is that?
I think essentially, as you said, within teams, within any team, conversations and support take time.
Yes.
And so therefore, with any profession which is busy, it can be so difficult to carve out that time. And yet, as you said, if a senior leader is wanting to support its team and say, I value you, you matter, that kind of thing, people need to have psychological safety. Yes. And part of that is having protected time, and need to feel able to get that support, ask for that support when they need it.
And that's the characteristic that's really important. So it's known at every levels that you're supporting people, and it is the high stakes is there. We're delivering a public service, and we want to make sure that it's the highest quality it can be. Well, let's go back to you're aware of it. You know that it's a characteristic, and you're identifying, and you've given some great sort of steps to where. So what are where are the quick wins? What can be achieved? Once you've identified that someone is waking up early, or someone is getting a bit irritable, and it's there's not consistency. The person is showing signs of stress. What there's a longer term view, but what can be done in the short term?
So I think the first thing I would say is, if you are the person who is struggling, please seek help from your senior leaders, from charities like Education Support, have a 24-hour hotline, from your GP. Please do seek help and support. As I mentioned, I think the most important thing is to have that conversation, and it would be with between the school leader or the head of year, to have that conversation if it's a direct classroom teacher, and to think about how support is needed. It might be that they go and see their GP and they actually need some time away from work. That might be what their healthcare provider decides, but it might be that they need some extra support. It might be that something particularly is challenging them. And I think the thing that always really strikes me about teachers is that the sense I get is it's like being on the stage. So you have this long day, you arrive early, and then you have this middle section of the day when the students are there, and you are essentially on the stage. There's nowhere to hide. And I'm always really struck by, and I ask myself, well, how do teachers manage? So if something is happening in the classroom that is difficult, that is upsetting, because of course, as we know, teachers do so much more than teach. They are providing pastoral support, they're providing mentoring, they are carrying so many or wearing so many hats in their role as teachers, that if something difficult happens, how do they manage that in the moment? And then how do they maybe deal with that later on? Yeah. So it might be something as simple as a teacher having permission to debrief with someone and making that really explicit at the end of the day so that they can process some difficult things that they've been dealing with. It might be that they need some extra support in the classroom. And of course, that has implications that you'll be much more familiar with in terms of is there the manpower available? It might be that they want some support and upskilling. And then sometimes, and one of the things I talk about in my workshops are just other ideas. So when we are feeling stressed, are there things that we can do in the moment to help? And of course, for teachers, that must be so tricky because they're still on the stage. But things like box breathing, which I believe it's used by the Navy SEALs. And it's an idea where you picture a box or a square, and you essentially breathe in for 4 seconds and hold that for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds and hold that for 4 seconds. And you can change the length of the timing. But it's an idea of helping you to come back into the moment, calm your breathing, calm your nervous system in the moment so that you can deal with whatever's happening. But I guess for teachers, so often they have to hold that tension, park it, and then come back to it later.
And that is true, because things are happening in the moment. You know, if you've got 30 individuals in the room and they're all having their moments, you know, that is the thing to deal with. I just wanted something that you said there about leaders and teachers at the end of the day, and I know, you know, in my role, as a governor, a chair of governors, and a trustee of a multi-academy trust. I know I work with trusts where, you know, I've been asked the question about supervision. Should we pay for supervision for head teacher or senior leadership team so that they can decompress at the end of the day or share? And my own personal view, and I practice this with those that, you know, I work with at that level, is to say, yes, we will invest a few £100 every year to buy a certain number of hours, and you use as much or as little as you need. Well, hopefully they generally use all of it, but you know, and an encouragement to leaders that, you know, you're carrying a lot, and you know, a lot of social concerns that come your way. You can't hold that individually. You need to have a space to offload it and speak, you know, to talk about it and get it, as you said, Pippa. It's, to me, that is an essential. And I would encourage more people to buy into these services. You know, when you consider you know, the cover costs for a day for a member of staff is now 200, 250, 300 pounds a day. You can buy these kind of supervisions for units of that, and you'll get, you know, if that saves a person being off stressed and unwell, it's a great investment. So, you know, that I think just highlight that from what you've just said. I think more people need to be using those kind of facilities, and it's no slight to their ability. It's actually an enhancing your ability. I think, you know, that's an important thing to be saying. And then the breathing. That's a really simple, easy, cheap, effective process, isn't it? It's just free air.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are other things that people can do, or it might be that they say, right, I'm going to go for a walk outside at lunchtime. I'm going to grab a friend, I'm going to take my coffee, and we're going to go for a walk, get some fresh air, burn off some of that adrenaline, just to help calm things down if the morning, for example, has been really, really tricky.
And I guess I learned that through the process I went through. You know, fresh air, you know, even sea air is a great healer to you know, just to fill your brain with oxygen because that depth that you're feeling with the stress and, you know, adrenaline and, you know, and all its negative effects on you, you need to do that. And I just, you know, encourage people. I know so many teachers that will arrive at school at 7:30 in the morning. They don't get the coffee time. They grab lunch on the move if they do at all, and all they've taken is caffeine. And then at 6 o'clock, when they realise it's time to go home, they've done 13 hours. They probably haven't eaten properly. They've had far too much caffeine, and then, you know, it hits them. That's not a healthy environment, is it?
No. And I think what really strikes me about teachers is that everything is set within the timetable. So, you know, they're even, you know, going to the lavatory. You can't do that in the middle of the lesson. You have to wait, or going to get a cup of tea, whatever it is. It's all within the timetable. And so, and as you said, if they're grabbing lunch on the run, is there a way that they can carve out time to have their lunch outdoors with a colleague? You know, batch these things that are good for us together, some fresh air, some nutritious food, and some connection. But I appreciate it's really challenging when you've got a busy day, or you might have lunchtime duties. You might be, you know, on playground duty or be running a club. And I think that's why there's so much of teaching that is unseen. Those, as you mentioned, those unseen hours before school, those unseen hours after school. And one of the things that what's the right expression, bothers me is when people say to me, oh, but, you know, look at the long holidays. And I think, well, so often when I talk to teachers, they get to the end of term and they're just exhausted, and they lose, you know, a week or two just by recovering really from the term. And as you said, particularly the winter term that's coming up to Christmas, it's so busy. And then they might be preparing for a Christmas production, or actually, my daughter's on a school trip today, so 2 of her teachers have gone early for this school trip, and all these additional hours. And then, you know, they might be planning for school trips abroad, marking, prepping for the term ahead. And I just think there's so much that is not seen that teachers do, and that really bothers me. It upsets me when people make those comments about long holidays, because you think, you know, these long days that you're doing, as you say, and it's really only the middle bit of the day that is seen.
Yeah. I've had a lifetime of people telling me that, you know. Actually, the experience I went through, one of the specialists said to me, you know, because I was just thinking about what you said about the special forces people, you know, that they need to manage their stress, and they do it with the breathing. Actually, somebody said to me, you don't, you know, and it was I don't think it's been clinically observed, but it was an observation they made, because he was actually part of the medical group and military medical group that looked at the Gulf War syndrome and talked about Gulf War syndrome, and said, actually, you realize the kind of after action stress that, you know, once you've done your tour, there's a period that service people go, particularly if they've been in high stress situation, and, you know, the Gulf War was where it kind of came out. And he was making similarities between term length and what happens in that first 2 weeks. And it was only when I began to see that, I watched that happening. I remember a head of department saying to me way back, you know, actually 35 years ago, saying to me, Chris, just watch your driving in the last 2 weeks of term, because he'd spent a career and seeing people having accidents and crashes and doing things foolishly in that 2 week period. And it builds I'm thinking about that self-regulation. Just be aware of how you are.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I found that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of the things I looked at recently at the school was we did a term planner, and there are the natural breaks that fall there with the term. But I also said, look at your pinch points. So it might be that very last week of term, there's an awful lot happening. What can you do outside of work? Can you get extra support? Do you need to fill up the freezer before then. Do you just need to be really mindful of that, as you were saying, and keep your weekends clear? Really simple things that we forget. So this weekend I am going to, get lots of rest, get lots of sleep. Or actually, this weekend I really need to connect with people because I'm actually feeling a bit isolated. It might be one or the other. But planning your term, seeing where your pinch points are, it might be that outside of work, someone you're caring for needs an operation, or you've got a dental problem, or the boiler breaks. Some of these things we can't predict, but some of them we can see coming. So can we give ourselves permission? And I love the word permission. Can we give ourselves permission to go easy on ourselves in those pinch points, and perhaps not say yes to that extra thing that we don't have to say yes to? So I think that's really interesting what you said about being careful driving in the last 2 weeks of term because people are tired. Yeah.
I guess all of these, I could be a bit long in the tooth. I've done this for a lot of time, but actually it's these kind of things that make a difference in early stage careers. There are things that you get it right early, create the habit that you're going to live with, and that will sustain you. One of the well-being questions that's been raised is the kind of longevity of people's career is so much reduced because they see it as that stressful, and I can't live with this. And I think the health service is probably experiencing something similar, isn't it? It's
Yeah. I mean, both teaching and health and social care have, as I said, very high rates of stress, and I think permission to be open and honest is so important, which is why what I've noticed in my workshops, what's really interesting, what people say to me is, I didn't realize it's not just me. Because if you feel that it's just you who is struggling, then that can then bring with it a second level where you feel shame, which is a horrible emotion. And that can lead to loneliness and isolation. So if we can break that by allowing people and giving them permission to have these conversations, oh gosh, I'm struggling because I've got to sort out, my children are going on their Duke of Edinburgh award, and I've got this going on and that going on, and the house is a mess, and If we can give ourselves permission, then that is half the battle. And of course, we have that saying, don't we? A problem shared is a problem halved. But I often think of the analogy on an aeroplane where you have the safety notice, and it says, if the cabin loses air pressure, oxygen masks will appear, and always put on your own oxygen mask before helping somebody else. And of course, I think so many of us in the caring professions, teaching absolutely as a caring profession, we automatically go to help the person sitting next to us. And then you end up, I'm hypoxic, they're hypoxic, we all pass out. We need to put on our own oxygen mask, and we need to have permission and time to do that. And I think as school leaders, if I'm not a school leader, but as school leaders, if they facilitate that and give their staff permission that it's okay to have these conversations, then that can help, as you said, people begin to develop healthy habits, which will hopefully improve the longevity of their career and maintain their health as well.
It comes down to that intentionality, doesn't it? I'm going to take this seriously. It is an issue, and as I said, this is my most valuable resource. So if I don't look after it, I'm squandering that valuable resource. So it's really important. Pippa, I'm just going to pause for a minute because I need to do the social media bit. Thank you. We'll come back. I just want to, in the next part, just start with that kind of overcoming guilt that you just referred to, those kind of feelings. So where do you begin in that conversation? Just want to say thank you to Pippa in the conversation. I hope you're finding this valuable. It really is such an important subject, and if we're going to make a change in this profession, I think we got to take these things really seriously. I'm just going to refer to a few things. You're here on LinkedIn or YouTube or Spotify or Substack. This is where you'll find the Smart Curriculum Network, and you're involved in this the Friday Focus podcast. You'll know that we also have the Leaders Compass, which is on Substack, which is becoming a premium resource. We're diving deep into some of the subjects that we have been referring to. And you'll know that there is the Smart Curriculum Network review newsletter that goes out weekly, and then on Substack a deeper dive which is going deeper into some of the subjects. So please do get involved in these conversations. I've just put the detail on the screen here. So search for the Smart Curriculum Network. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Spotify, we're on Substack and YouTube, and that is growing. We've got thousands of people that are involved in that, and those that are watching Friday Focus here, thank you for joining us. But please get involved in the other elements. If you receive the newsletter weekly, you can move to what we're doing on Substack, which is more regular and there's more content there, and the deep dives will be special to that part of it. I do just want to refer to the Efficient School book, because I think it does impact this subject that we're talking about today. It isn't just about money, it's about practices, it's about what we're doing. So much of what's happening in the education world is there's not enough money, so we cut it to the bone. But actually, I believe it's about investing in the right things, and part of what we're talking about today is one of those things, looking after our valuable resource. So please, if you haven't seen it already, get a copy of The Efficient School. It's an ebook on Amazon. The QR code is on the screen, and there will be a follow. So in the new year, we're hoping to publish the perfect timetable, which again is about where we facilitate teachers to do the things that they need to do. So please get involved in the conversation, get involved in these things that are here we're putting out, and let's get back to this conversation with Dr. Pippa Woolner. Pippa, so just what we said before, I just took that break. This element of dealing with the guilt. So how do we overcome that feeling? We've said it's this professional dialogue. We know that this moral purpose is deep within some people, and we feel it, don't we? It's a real thing.
Yeah, I think when we're working in teams, if we feel that we are struggling, part of the feeling of guilt might be that we are this expression is kind of dumping on our colleagues, isn't it? If I'm not there, who is going to run my class? If I don't do it, who will? And I think particularly in vocational professions, we can link our identity to our job. Because, of course, if you go to a social event and you meet people, one of the first things people ask you is, oh, what do you do? Yeah. And some of us can feel our identity so deeply that if our work becomes a bit unstuck, or we're struggling at work, it can almost lead to that sense of personal crisis of, oh my goodness, well, if I am not performing well as a teacher, then who am I? So it can be incredibly distressing for that individual. And I think if it's at that point, then certainly some support from your own GP, but perhaps some one-to-one coaching or something like that can help. The other thing I think as well, just to come back to, is that we know that teacher wellbeing is directly linked to student wellbeing and student outcomes. So sometimes it can help to be really, really practical, because if I am struggling, that will have an effect probably, on my students. Therefore, it's really important that I do look after myself, because we know that teacher wellbeing and student wellbeing go hand in hand, essentially. And so there's that idea of who am I if I'm struggling in a job that is a vocation to me. And then there's also that sense of, is it just me? And if it's just me, then you can develop a habit. You can get a lot of negative self-talk, and what we call negative automatic thoughts as well, which can be incredibly damaging. And so that's why simple act of talking to colleagues and being honest and open. And I'm not saying to people be honest and open with everybody about how you're feeling, but finding a trusted colleague or a trusted friend that you can talk to can help break down that guilt and that shame. If you recognize that you're not alone, or if you recognize, oh, somebody else has been there, but they have come out, the other end, and they've got some things that they can help me with. because I think otherwise guilt and shame can be so destructive and can push people into more isolation. And as we know, that can be a very, very unpleasant and upsetting place to be.
And that's so important, of finding that person that you can and not offload to, but you can share with, and because there's so often the camaraderie. I know, having worked in some very challenging schools, finding people, I actually you reminded me as you was talking about, we used to, as an SLT, so a senior leadership team, it was stressful and it was tough and it was on the go all the time, but we all tried to find 15 minutes in the middle of the day where we sat down and grabbed a sandwich or grabbed a drink, and we sat in one of the senior rooms, the boardroom or whatever it was, but we just got a few minutes where we were trusted around the table. You could say, this has gone well, this isn't so well, we've got this coming up, but it was just that moment of trust that made it sustainable. And I can just, you reminded me of that as you were talking. I can picture, it's 15 years ago now, but it was an important part of working in that stressful environment for us. And I know that's true of other teams. I think that's really to be commended to people. And
I think, actually, funny enough, as you said that, I remember my colleagues from when I worked many, many years ago in kind of frontline hospital medicine, and I'm still in touch with one of them, and we were talking, and we thought, gosh, we had such a bond as a group of friends and colleagues because we were all doing this work together, and that support from your colleagues was so important, when it's the middle of the night essentially, and you've got a lot of sick people that you're looking after, and it can feel very it might feel a bit overwhelming. So those friendships, I think we all need one person at least in our workplace that we can talk to.
And they do actually, they create bonds for life. I've got colleagues now, friends that have been through, and yes, of course, you reminisce about the funny things, but it is actually important just to build that camaraderie, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But in terms of so we're talking generally. So there are people that are in it, living it now. In terms of all of the sort of the data that we're now beginning to see, are there points in people's careers where it becomes like a trigger point or significant things, or is it just a general, it's happening right the way through? Is there a characteristic that people could be looking for or aware of? We talked about the end of term kind of feeling, and that sort of Gulf War syndrome idea of coming out and losing the adrenaline pressure and so on, and all the body's doing in that. Are there points that you recognize where kind of burnout strikes? Is there a place that people should be aware of apart from what we've said already?
I don't think that I'm particularly aware of, but I think that burnout's been recognised by the World Health Organization as a phenomenon, as a phenomenon triggered essentially by chronic workplace stress.
Right. Yeah, that's a good thing.
So an occupational phenomenon due to chronic workplace stress is their definition. But I think what I notice is that people carry a lot. So if I was doing some one-to-one work with somebody, it would always be a holistic approach because we are, we carry so many roles and we wear so many hats. So I think there are some points in life where those things might become more pronounced. So it might be that you are in that position where you have perhaps maybe older parents that you are caring for, supporting, and also children, young people in your own home that you are supporting alongside a career, perhaps alongside other roles as well. And recognizing that you are carrying a lot obviously increase, those sorts of things increase your risk of stress and pressure. But at the same time, I would not want to diminish when you've got new teachers coming into the profession, and we know that there is it's over, what was it last year, over a quarter of teachers who qualified in 2001 no, sorry, in 2021, 20 years out of date, 2021 had left by 2024. So in those first 3 years of working.
Yeah.
So there's something going on there as well in terms of new teachers who I would imagine most of them are at a younger stage of life. Of course, not all of them, but a lot of them. So what's going on there as well? But I suppose coming back to what I was saying about looking at your term planner, also looking at your life planner in a sense and thinking, okay, I've got a lot going on at the moment, or next year, you know, I might have a bit more capacity because, you know, something will have shifted in my home circumstances and I might be able to do more. But this year there's a lot going on and I need to not take on that extra role. I need to learn how to say no, which is a whole other conversation. So I think that particular time, when you've got a lot going on, maybe we talk about the sandwich generation, don't we, can be stressful. But there's clearly something going on with new teachers. And I think I would need to look into that, you know. More to find out.
You know, as you're talking, there's so many things. Maybe you'll come back and talk about that, how to say no. That's an interesting.
Yes, love to. It's something that I as someone who likes to please other people, I think it's certainly tricky, and setting boundaries as well. But one thing I was thinking about recently, which I think is quite interesting, is how we often talk about boundaries and, you know, setting boundaries. But actually so often the boundaries that we struggle with are the boundaries to set with ourselves. And that's something that I find really interesting. So this idea of teachers being accessible, you know, emails 24/7 and you know, when I know in my workshops that some teachers might say, I will log on for an hour on a Sunday afternoon and clear my emails so that I know I'm ready and fresh for Monday morning. And some others might say, no, I'm not doing that. I'll do them on Monday because that's when I'm working. And it's very much that negotiation with yourself. But somebody else might say, oh, I got an email from my head of year, you know, on a Sunday, and why are they emailing me on a Sunday? When really the real question is, okay, but is your boundary to not check your emails on a Sunday? And that's something that I constantly have to revisit myself, and boundaries can evolve over time and change with the seasons. But I think it's really interesting, this idea of actually, can we keep our own boundaries? It's not easy.
And it is. And, you know, there are lots of things that have been put in as a scheduled sending, you know, scheduled sending and say, well, I'm going to send it all at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning. Have you thought about the recipient that now gets 300 emails at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, and what on earth are they going to do with it? And did all that stuff need to be in the email? There's lots of things there that are stress inducers that, you know, we as organizations, we really do need to think about. So yes, when it's come, and I know I was guilty, you know, when I was writing timetables and at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd just send an email, please don't reply to this now. But it's the fact that I was sending it at that point was not helpful. But, you know, we learn in this new tech age. That's
it's tricky.
Wouldn't do that now. But it's been a fascinating conversation, Pippa. We could go on, and I'd love, please, we do need. The thing that's been resounding in my head all the way through is the pressure of perfectionism, which is very, very prevalent among staff. I've got to get this right. I need to invest in this to get this so that it's right for the children, and that's another kind of driver. But let's not go down that road.
Really interesting, though. Yeah.
So look, in the work you're doing. So let's just feature a little bit. So you turned this into some workshops that you're doing with schools. You do it with health service as well as a coach. But so
So for my own work, what I do is I have developed some workshops that I do with teachers, because obviously there's lots to support student pupil wellbeing, and that is really, really important. But my passion is, you know, supporting the teachers, and so I deliver those there, ideal as part of an inset day or a twilight session, face to face or online. So that's something that I have been developing recently.
So how, if somebody was interested in this, whether they can come to contact you, how's
Yeah.
the best way to get hold of you? We can put the details in the
Yeah.
show notes when it goes out, but just
Yeah.
how would they get in touch with you if they were interested?
Yeah, so just to drop me an email. So my email is just my name. So it's drpippawoolner@gmail.com, or contact me via my website, which is drpippawoolner.com. And I do a monthly newsletter for teachers. So if anyone wants to, interested in getting that, just drop me an email or sign up for the newsletter on the website. And I'm also on LinkedIn as Dr.
Yes.
Pippa Woolner. That's me.
Yes. And that's where we connected, and that's so.
Yeah, exactly.
LinkedIn is I mean, that's where we do a lot of our work as Smart Curriculum Network. So that's if you want to find it, just ping me a note and I'll introduce as well. So you can if that's something you're interested in. But Pippa, as we've gone through this conversation, I always ask the question, before I ask the one thing, what would you say is a key takeaway for people? If there were some things that they could act on now, they could do now, what would you be saying to someone that's saying, like, I sense this? What would you say to me to do right away?
So if you sense an individual that you are struggling, please talk to someone. See your GP, talk to your head of year, talk to your head or your deputy head, somebody that you feel able to talk to. Please don't let it bubble along, because what we don't want is the Roadrunner scenario where all of a sudden you've hit burnout, and that can be a really hard, long road to recovery. Please ask for help and support. That would be my key message. Yeah.
And then I guess the question that I ask everybody, which is if you could change one thing, and we're thinking of the teaching profession here and the education process, wherever. I mean, people that are watching this will be, from anywhere in the world. So it's not just the English system. If you could change one thing about the educator's experience, what would it be, Pippa?
I think it is teachers having a sense that they have permission to be honest about how they feel, and to have protected time to have those conversations, be it in a group or be it in one-to-one, and that their leaders have the resources to have the time to have those conversations with their staff, which I'm sure they want to have, so that they can support their staff.
That's wonderful. Pippa, thank you for the conversation. Please do stay with me for a moment. I just need to do the end, but Dr. Pippa Woolner, if you want to get in touch, we've given you those routes to do so. But please, such an important area, and I do hope you'll come back and let's talk about this. How to manage the nose. That's a really important conversation to have. But thank you, Pippa. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
So thank you to Dr. Pippa Woolner for that conversation today. If you want to engage in any way, please just leave a message under this post, or go direct message me, or you can find Dr. Pippa Woolner on LinkedIn, as she's just said. So thank you again for being here this morning. It's Friday Focus is being heard all over the world and is engaged with by by leaders and teachers around the world interested in this profession, and we're focusing on things that we need to change the profession, and certainly this wellbeing conversation is one of those really strong elements at the moment. So come and find us, whatever mechanism you're using, or whatever platform you are using, LinkedIn, Spotify, Substack, YouTube, and the growing number on the newsletter that's going out now under the Smart Curriculum Network review. So please join us at some point. Please leave a comment. So great for you to be here. Our next episode, we're in Wales, talking to Claire Armistead at the ASCL Wales, ASCL Cymru conference. Please join us there. We'll see you before the Christmas term comes to an end. Thanks very much for being here. Speak to you very soon.